You will only see this with us. Akhmat has fought to the end. Kadyrov's paratroopers are smashed to pieces, and Russian conscripts are surrendering en masse to Ukrainian captivity. Unique video, Ukrainian aviation incinerates the invaders. The MiG-29 strikes the enemy with hammer bombs. Hell in Kryvyi Rih and Kharkiv, Putin continues the genocide and kills Ukrainian children. Watch the fiery hot and blazing footage from the front line right now. The bloody war continues. The war that Vladimir Putin and his pack unleashed on Ukrainian soil. The heroic resistance of the Ukrainian armed forces and the entire Ukrainian people in their fight for freedom continues. Greetings! This is Front News. With you is Volodymyr Tymoshenko. In the next 30 minutes, you will find the truth about the war, which our journalists are uncovering from the hottest battle zones. So, are you ready? Then, let's begin. Terrifying. A ballistic strike on Kryvyi Rih, a new bloody and chilling chapter of this war, written by Putin's Russia. As a result of the enemy strike on the center of a residential district in Kryvyi Rih on April 4th, 20 people were killed, including 9 children. Another 75 people were injured. It is likely that Russia launched a cluster missile at the city, which is usually used in war against infantry. But the Kremlin terrorists deliberately targeted Ukrainian children, as there was a playground near the How impact site. The details of this horror are in an exclusive and chilling report by TSN correspondent Olga Pavlovska.
The number of dead and injured continues to rise. The rescue of the victims continues despite new threats. Air raid alerts are being announced repeatedly in the region. The Russians struck with ballistic missiles at a densely populated residential area around 7 in the evening. The impact was right next to a children's playground. Photos and videos are being published online showing the area burning near the swings. According to preliminary data, it was a cluster Iskander. The streets were full of people, families with children. The explosion occurred almost immediately after the alert was announced, so people simply didn't have time to take cover. The bodies of the deceased are on the sidewalks in the parks next to the children's swings. Indescribable pain is captured in the footage as a mother holds the hand of her deceased son. According to local media, the boy was 15.
You are my sunshine. You are my darling.
According to the Ministry of Internal Affairs, more than 20 high-rise buildings have been destroyed, educational institutions and cafes have been damaged, and about 30 cars have been wrecked. There are fatalities in the cars that caught fire as a result of the strike. Medics are fighting for the lives of the injured. According to the Ministry of Internal Affairs, more than 50 people are injured. The youngest is only 3 months old. The boy has lacerations.
This is the most massive attack in recent times on the city of Kryvyi Rih and the Dnipropetrovsk region as a whole. About 20 high-rise buildings have been damaged. This is civilian infrastructure, high-rise buildings, a peaceful residential area of Kryvyi Rih. There are no critical infrastructure facilities near the residential buildings at all. Regarding the nature of the damage, we see that it is indeed preliminary cluster damage. That is an Iskander with cluster explosive weapons. Many fragments, a lot of damage. Everyone who was near the epicenter of the strike perished.
Russian propagandists immediately claimed that a precision strike in Kryvyi Rih destroyed military personnel and foreign instructors. This is denied by the General Staff. They stated that the Russians deliberately used an Iskander-M with a cluster charge to increase the area of impact and the number of casualties. Such a fabrication about a gathering of military personnel is also refuted by the locals. They say that in the restaurant near the playground Seiji, only beauty club gatherings were held, and it was precisely such a gathering that took place on Friday afternoon. All day long, people have been bringing toys and flowers to this playground, honoring the memory of the deceased adults and children, I see, and saying that even if they didn't know them, they perceive this tragedy as a personal grief.
There were screams because there were people there. Bodies were lying there. People were running straight, screaming even if they weren't relatives. It was terrifying. They were trying to save a child here, but as I understood, they didn't succeed. She died, only 3 years old. My daughter studies at the 113th school. A girl from the 9th grade died. And my high schooler is also in the 10th grade. It's hard because my daughter's friend was here walking with a friend, and mine was a little lower. Well, I mean, it could have happened to anyone. It just doesn't fit in my head. It's such a horror. It's simply indescribable, even if you don't know these people. They are children, after all.
There were screams. Because...
Yes, it's impossible to watch this horror without pain. This pain truly gives you goosebumps. The reaction of the Ukrainian military is telling. For example, a Ukrainian defender with the call sign Rambo. He is from Kryvyi Rih. His wife and child heard these hellish explosions. Now, this paratrooper from the 25th Siechislav Brigade, which is defending Pokrovsk, leaves messages for the Russian pseudo-soldiers on the shells. Shells that will definitely hit their target. Here's how it happens.
I am from Kryvyi Rih. Yesterday it hit the Yubilane neighborhood. It's not far from me. My wife heard the explosions, children died. We will take revenge. We'll sign them and let them receive these gifts. We will take revenge.
We'll sign. Let them receive the gift. Receive the gift. Receive the gift. Yes.
I think they will be pleased.
Where exactly will these explosives fly to?
These explosives will fly to the basements where there are concentrations of Russians.
It's very cynical when the enemy is essentially fighting against unarmed people.
It's completely unfair.
It is. In principle, it's unfair to have such weapons that they have and we don't. We have to fight with what we know. Well, but we are very good at it. Where the 25th Brigade stands, they will not pass. That's for sure. I can responsibly declare that to you.
You can responsibly declare. Good morning.
And there's no sympathy for them at all. Absolutely none. Absolutely at all.
Do you have... your own children?
Yes, two. My oldest is in Azov. He's 18 years old.
Now, he went through without an IDP and was already...
Now, he was already wounded. They evacuated him. He was on medevac.
And what do you feel when you see that the Russians strike again?
Well, I feel tears in my eyes. They come back.
What I can feel, tears well up in my eyes. I keep all emotions to myself, do my job, and that's it.
So, like that.
Well, now it's time to analyze the operational situation. On the blazing Pokrovsk front, the enemy continues its military terror. On the Pokrovsk front, since the beginning of the day, the occupiers have made 30 attempts to push our defenders from their positions. In the areas of the settlements of Karinovo, Alexandropol, Tarasovka, Yelizavetovka, Udachnoye, Uspenovka, Preobrazhenko, Andreevka, as well as in the directions of Kotlyarovka and Sergeyevka. The defense forces are holding back the enemy's onslaught and have already repelled 25 attacks. 5 clashes are still ongoing. But, this week, Putin's thugs have also taken a serious beating. And, not only Putin's, but also Kadyrov's. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, the Ukrainian armed forces blew up an armored vehicle with Kadyrov's paratroopers from the Akhmat East unit. Moreover, Russians continue to surrender to Ukrainian captivity. It's understandable, as since the start of the major war, Russia has lost over 900,000 military personnel, with 250,000 of them killed. These are data from NATO officials. All the details of what is happening on the battlefields are in our report. Let's watch.
A few Kadyrovites down. In the temporarily occupied Melitopol of the Zaporizhzhia region, an enemy Tiger armored vehicle exploded, with the crew and paratroopers from the Akhmat East unit. Meanwhile, the Russians themselves are fleeing to the Ukrainian armed forces. A company commander from St. Petersburg surrendered along with his subordinates. The Russian battalion, which included his company, was almost completely destroyed. Only 5 soldiers remain, reports Censor.net.
Were they dying of hunger at the position?
Yes. They wanted to take me down with their...
And 2 Ukrainian fighters covered you?
It was the right decision to surrender to you, as I saved my life and the lives of my comrades who came out with me.
But not everyone manages to save their life. The aggressor country, Russia, has lost more than 900,000 military personnel since the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Of those, 250,000 were killed. These figures were announced by a high-ranking NATO official. Among the wounded occupiers, many have sustained life-altering injuries.
The total mobilization reserve of the occupying country is about 15 million. The current losses will be replenished through the spring draft. It is planned to call up to 160,000 personnel. Most likely, these 160,000 will be used as an operational reserve to address strategic tasks both within the territory of the Russian Federation, such as pushing Ukrainian defense forces out of the Kursk and Belgorod regions, and directly in the zone of the so-called special military operation on the territory of Ukraine.
According to the data from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Russian troops lost approximately 1,380 soldiers in a day. In addition, the occupiers lost 100 units of military equipment. NATO General Christopher Cavoli compared Russia's losses in Ukraine to an entire U.S. tank corps, which is more than 4,000 tanks.
The Russian occupation army has lost 10,528 tanks over the entire period of the large-scale invasion of Ukraine. Just in the last day, the Russian occupiers lost another 7 units of heavy armored vehicles. And for understanding, as of even the year 24, according to satellite images on long-term storage bases, from about 6,000 tanks that were there at the start of the large-scale invasion, no more than 2,000 remain.
Already this year, according to experts' estimates, Russia may face a shortage of tanks due to huge losses on the front and production issues.
At the moment, the Russian Federation is unable to produce modern models of heavy armored vehicles. In the Russian Federation, there is only one enterprise capable of producing heavy armored vehicles, as they say, from scratch. This is Uralvagonzavod. According to various estimates, the monthly production of T-90 tanks, the latest models of Russian armored vehicles, is no more than 10 units. According to the estimates of both foreign and Russian specialists, the production of the latest models of armored vehicles in the Russian Federation is at the level of up to 200 tanks per year.
Meanwhile, NATO sees no signs that Moscow is preparing for a ceasefire. Its goals remain unchanged.
In the last 2 weeks, there has been a sharp intensification of hostilities along the entire length of the line of contact. This concerns both military actions on the territory of the Russian Federation and directly on the territory of Ukraine. Moreover, the Russian Federation is trying to expand the theater of operations by involving the territories of the Sumy and Kharkiv regions. In addition, there is a sharp intensification of hostilities in the Zaporizhzhia direction, and accordingly the traditionally difficult situation in the Donetsk direction.
But the Ukrainian military is ready to fight against the Russian invaders. The Supreme Allied Commander Europe of NATO, General Christopher Cavoli, stated that the armed forces of Ukraine are holding their positions and implementing innovations on the front.
This is an acknowledgement that the defense forces of Ukraine are capable not only of holding back the onslaught of the occupiers, but also of conducting successful counter-offensive actions. Moreover, not only on the territory of Ukraine, but primarily on the territory of the Russian Federation.
Cavoli also noted that the defense forces continue to hold a bridgehead in Kursk and have even advanced towards the Belgorod region. And in Chasiv Yar in recent months, the Russian offensive has somewhat begun to decrease.
The heaviest battles are taking place in the Chasiv Yar area. The Ukrainian defense forces are holding positions in 2 neighborhoods of this settlement. The main task of the occupiers is to try to reach the Bakhmut-Kostiantynivka highway directly. Chasiv Yar is a key point of Ukrainian defense, which effectively covers further advancement of the occupying forces towards the Slovyanska-Kramatorsk agglomeration.
Well, now let's analyze the operational situation on the Kramatorsk and Toretsk fronts. The bloody frenzy of the enemy's army continues here as well. On the Kramatorsk front, Ukrainian defenders are currently repelling an attempt by the occupiers to advance in the area of Kurdyumivka. Our defenders have already successfully stopped 2 clashes near Chasiv Yar. On the Toretsk front, the enemy attacked 8 times near Dakhne, Shkerbinivka, and Toretsk. 1 clash is still ongoing.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
The liberation of the Chernihiv region from Russian invaders, which occurred just over 3 years ago, is a separate and crucial part of this terrible war. For an endlessly long 33 days, Chernihiv was a territory of Russian torture chambers, burned Russian equipment, and shot people. Once again, the Chernihiv region was liberated from the Russian world just over 3 years ago. And one of the first groups of journalists to enter after that was the film crew of our colleagues from the television news service. Natalia Nagornaya, along with the military and local residents, recalled how it was. Let's watch the report.
This spot on the road immediately draws attention, and it is a reminder of the events from 3 years ago. It was here that we came 3 years ago to see a liberated Chernihiv region. The villages of Starya and Novye Bikiv were among the first settlements to be liberated. Even the weather was similar back then. Only we were walking here in helmets and bulletproof vests. Here is where the Kyiv region ends and the Chernihiv region begins. And it was precisely here that until recently was the last line of our defense. These are shots from our archive and evidence of how the local residents were preparing to resist the occupiers. The locals were also preparing, making bandera smoothies, but volunteers arrived and it wasn't needed. In the middle of the field lay remnants of rockets.
At least someone has a nose.
And the defensive structures still smelled of fresh wood and battles back then.
The fruits have already started.
The mortars had already started working, grenades were flying in, so we started digging in. The local guys from the territorial defense helped us.
This is Pedro's friend. At the moment, he is serving in the 67th Brigade and is currently fighting on the Sumy and Kursk fronts. He was able to get to Bykov 2.5 years after its liberation.
There was a very deep and profound sense of nostalgia. It feels like I'm back in 1914-15, just as the war started.
Just when the war started.
The commander of their battalion is Taras Babanish. In April 2022, Hammer was our guide. He made sure we stayed on the road and constantly talked about his fighters, of whom he is very proud.
As a result of the work
of Ukrainian artillery, we managed to destroy, accordingly, their target. There were a lot of shells of various kinds and calibers here. The consequences of this can be seen.
The former Russian ammunition depot now more closely resembles a melon field. Only instead of watermelons, there are remnants of grads and artillery shells lying around. After Chernihiv region, the right sector relocated to the Kharkiv region. Their friend Hammer led the guys into battle and died.
I bring in the people and say, I will personally oversee everything here. Position the people. But since he went first, he took all the fire upon himself. He died. Focus's friend also died that day.
Friend Focus also died that day.
But back then, 3 years ago in Free Bykov, we didn't yet know that we were accompanied by a future official hero of Ukraine. This title was awarded to friend Hammer posthumously. This particular intersection from 3 years ago stands out in my memory the most, because there was a pile of burnt Russian scrap metal with a symbolic circle marking. The occupation of this community lasted 33 days. In the village of Novaya Basan, the number of residents at that time doubled. Unfortunately, at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, everyone who tried to leave Kyiv in this direction, heading to relatives or acquaintances, thought it would be safer here, but ended up in occupation.
I was held captive from March 5th to March 30th. In total, there were 20 of us held captive in Basan, including myself. Altogether, 20 people.
Nikolai Dyachenko, the local chairman, counted the passage of 850 units of enemy equipment by March 5th. After that, there was no time for counting. 19 civilians died in the community, including a teenager.
The war is not with us and not about us. And then
They turned out to be with us and about us. It's not easy to remember even 3 years later. Maria Zubets recounts how the occupiers fired in all directions and severely wounded her father. The hospital had neither medicine nor heating.
She says, "Why are you wounded?" Well, I say, "It happened here, your people were shooting. That's how I got wounded." They came in and indeed they see a person lying there. And Grandpa isn't offended that we wounded him.
And the grandfather doesn't hold a grudge that we wounded him.
Father started crying. Our family pediatrician stayed there along with a paramedic. At least at night, we could somehow keep in touch about the condition, what, where, and how, since they were in a cold building that was no longer heated, and they had no food, no water, nothing. And the injury was quite severe. I am very grateful even though my father died.
Even burying the dead was impossible. Svetlana recounts Nikolai's story.
He loved walking around the village. And we can probably guess that he was just walking and the Russians might have said something to him. But no one knows these details. They shot him. Kolya lay there for a whole month. His parents lived on a completely different street. They weren't even allowed to take him away.
Svetlana shows videos and photos of the battles for their community. A soldier from the 10th Mountain Assault Brigade sent them to her, because locals had their phones taken away, and it was simply impossible to leave the house.
We saw the first soldiers unexpectedly when they suddenly appeared. Well, I generally never cry, but something, I don't know, made me a little emotional. We saw the first soldiers on our street when they were riding on a tank. There were many of them, either an APC or an IFV. They were sitting on the vehicles. I think we will learn about all the guys who liberated us. Maybe we'll write a book. I would really like that.
The central streets are now named after those who fought with great bravery and dedication for the community and made the ultimate sacrifice, dying here in battle.
We renamed these streets. This Zhukovskaya street was renamed in honor of Andrei Nazarevich. The 30th anniversary of victory we named after Nazar Nebozinsky. Right at this spot where we are standing, Andrei Nazarevich died. That's why we decided to create this memorial here, a commemorative place, to immortalize their memory.
And now we move to the Novopavlovsk and Gulyapol front direction. Let's be honest, this is another sacred goal for Putin and his entire entourage. Accordingly, the situation here is also extremely tense. Today on the Novopavlovsk direction, our soldiers repelled 5 enemy attacks near Konstantinopol and Skudnoye. One battle is still ongoing. In the Gulyapol direction, the invaders carried out airstrikes on Voskresenka, Zelenoye Pol, Novopole, Malinovka, and Gulyapol. Ukrainian aviation continues to destroy the invaders. In just a minute, we will show you unique footage. A MiG-29 strikes the enemy with 2 hammer bombs on the Pardas-Pokrovsk direction of the front. Meanwhile, the Russians abandoned their own on the battlefield. There have been increasing cases where Russian conscripts simply refuse to evacuate their own wounded from the battlefield. We will also demonstrate this to you soon. But there is also troubling news. Russia is preparing a new massive offensive against Ukraine. Representatives of the legendary 3rd Assault Brigade say directly this could happen as early as April. However, the Center for Countering Disinformation names May as the date for the possible start of a Russian deep offensive. Which regions of Ukraine are under special attention? We delve into this in our report.
Ukrainian aviation is lighting up in the literal sense of the word. This video contains exclusive footage from the front line. A MiG-29 carries out airstrikes with 2 AASM hammer bombs on a house with Russian occupiers in the village of Zaporizhzhia in the Pokrovsky direction. Nevertheless, the enemy does not cease attempts to find weak spots on the front and advance. There is an increase in the activity of Russian troops on the front. They are intensifying strikes on key directions, preparing for a potential large-scale offensive. New tactics are creating new challenges for the Russians. As discovered by the partisans of the Atesh movement in the Zaporizhzhia region, the Russians are increasingly using small group tactics without the use of equipment. Accordingly, in the event of an injury, no one will come to evacuate the occupiers. Their further fate, either to remain dying under the open sky, sun, or to be captured, by our soldiers.
They are once again beginning to feel an acute shortage of personnel. Therefore, the tactic of small groups is being employed. There, infiltration is happening. Groups of 2, 3, 5, up to 10 people are moving in sections. The equipment is heavy. The impact zone practically does not extend to a depth of up to 5 kilometers. And if it does approach, it's something they clearly don't mind losing.
Most often, the Russians first send small infantry groups forward. Then the occupiers look for cover to gather strength. Ukrainian aerial reconnaissance detects such attempts, and the operators of the UAV group Spartan eliminate the Russians using various types of drones. Even though the Russians are dying like flies, they do not stop coming to Ukraine. Ukrainian military reports that for April and May of this year, Russian forces are preparing a new offensive on the Kharkiv and Sumy regions.
We definitely have information that the Russian Federation is indeed preparing an offensive for April. There are units currently located in the rear areas. In our direction, this is approximately 2 to 3 divisions. They have reserves, they are well staffed with personnel, and have been on training grounds for over a month preparing for their future actions.
There are attempts to break through on ATVs or motorcycles, but our FPV operators handle them quite confidently and quickly. For now, it is more a tactic of intimidation and terrorizing the civilian population. Yesterday's shelling of Kharkiv, the shelling of Zaporizhia, the shelling of peaceful cities, a typical treacherous situation for the Russian army and for Russia as a whole.
Another typical tactic of the Kremlin dictator is to mobilize as many people as possible to then send them to the front. This is what he has been doing in recent days.
Take a person off the street and throw them into a training camp. In a month, he will more or less learn to dig in, shoot, move in a dispersed formation, camouflage and distinguish a grenade from an anti-tank mine. In principle, this is quite enough for a short offensive.
The key point in all of this is that the offensives by the occupying army are indeed short, but the casualties from all of this are too high.
Now let's discuss in detail the situation on the Kupiansk and Lyman fronts. The Russian world continues to destroy, kill, and maim here as well. On the Kupiansk front, the enemy launched an assault on our defenders' positions near Zagryzovo once today. On the Lyman front, the invading army attacked 13 times near Nadia and towards Novoplatonovka, Novomikhalivka, Rakivka, Red Kodob, and Novo. 6 clashes are still ongoing. The entrance to an entire building was destroyed. People were burned alive. Recently, the Russians have been relentlessly pounding Ukrainian Kharkiv. Almost every time after the attacks, there are massive destructions in the city, with casualties and many injured. Unfortunately, this also happened on the evening of April 3rd. Details about another brutal attack by the occupiers can be seen in the report from our colleagues at the television news service.
People say the explosions occurred one after another without pauses. The blast wave blew out windows in apartments and shattered glass.
About 3 of them flew over. But then they reached here and went in different directions, one there, one there. And like a ball, it hit this house.
One of the drones simply hit an apartment in a high-rise building. A fire broke out there. According to law enforcement, a couple with a child lived on the 2nd floor, and a man lived on the 1st. Rescuers searched for their bodies almost all night. They were severely damaged.
Already from under the rubble.
The bodies have already been retrieved from under the rubble of the destroyed house. The charred bodies of the deceased. 4 people died. According to preliminary data, these are 2 men, a woman, and a child.
The impact was likely on the 2nd floor. The engine of the Shahed was found next to one of the walls. To confirm the identity of the deceased, DNA samples have already been taken from relatives. Identification is currently ongoing. The mother of the deceased from the 1st floor was not at home that night. Since early morning, she tried to call her son, but when she saw what happened to the apartment, she realized her son was gone.
I still don't know what happened to my son. Our apartment was completely burned out, and none of the neighbors know where he is or what happened to him. Among those taken to the hospital, he is not there. Most likely he perished.
2 more drones hit a 4-story building nearby. Windows were blown out in neighboring houses as well. Irina, her husband and son barely managed to run to the corridor. They say this is what saved their lives.
People, follow the rule of two walls. Because if we had been sitting in the room and not in the corridor, we wouldn't be here now.
A total of 7 hits were recorded in Kharkiv. Most of the strikes were in the Novobavarsky district. Another hit an administrative building in Kolotnogorsky, where there were no people at the time of the attack.
At the moment, more than 30 houses have been damaged. These include both apartment buildings and private houses. One family reached out to us. We have a dormitory in our district and they are going there today.
Since the beginning of the week, Kharkiv has endured 4 massive drone attacks. During this time there, nearly 50 drones were launched over the city. The attacks caused significant damage and claimed human lives.
That's all for today. But very soon, Front News will bring you new, unique materials from our journalists in the hottest spots of the war, gathered so that you know the truth. This was Vladimir Timoshenko with you. Take care of yourself and your loved ones.